If you've been missing the vibe of Squid Game, Netflix has brought a series that combines a little of that messed up game with some other creative works for the 8 show. So are you ready to play? 8 individuals trapped in a mysterious 8-story building participate in a tempting but dangerous game show where they earn money as time passes. This is an intense ride, and it starts off mildly and mysterious, and then begins to kick into full gear once the participants start to collaborate and figure out some of the strategies for this time-based game. 8 people are selected seemingly at random, and then taken to an unknown location where they must choose a card with a number. Once they enter the game setting, their card number is associated with the floor that they're going to be staying on. Now, the basic premise is that they earn money every minute, but everything costs. And all of this is discovered within the very first portion of the first episode. I mean, everything is a limited resource, so the contestants have to try to figure out how to maximize their earnings while also extending time. Now, the story feels a lot like The Lord of the Flies smashed with Big Brother. There's also a film that this shares features with, but I think it may be too much of a spoiler if I name that. But what makes this show intriguing is the team trying to figure out ways to accomplish the goals. And so that then creates various forms of conflict and tension, and that then in turn builds suspense and even dread for us as the audience. Frustratingly, we don't ever see who's behind the production. We don't know where the prize money comes from or how the mechanisms behind the scenes work. And while that's not needed to understand the game and get invested in the character drama, some elements of not knowing can hamper different aspects of the final product. Now, something I appreciate is how the resource of time is always limited. I mean, just like in life. But when the characters figure out how to maximize this resource, we as the audience become complicit in what goes down. We have to ask ourselves how we reacted to what we watched. It's a very subtle execution of a very pointed social commentary. What do we demand or crave, and what are we willing to do to get it? And this applies both ways through the screen. It's powerful without being loud, overt, or preachy. Now, I love how at the beginning of the series, absolutely everybody's a stranger. But as each episode progresses, we dive more and more into the players. Now, there's a square ratio perspective when we are viewing flashbacks, and the colors also take on this desaturated look. So it's very easy to determine where we are in the timeline. Now, some of what we've shown in the flashbacks, it can create conflicting emotions with our view of the characters. I mean, we may hate them inside the show, but when we see what they're dealing with or how they were before entering that game, and it works to inform us on their motivations, maybe even sympathy. Now, each episode feels like it doubles down on the last, becoming more and more creative in what the characters do to maximize their winnings. And as I'm sure you can imagine, some scheming begins to take place. And even before this happens, I mean, my guess is that you're going to already have picked out those you like and those you don't. Now, what was shocking to me is that one character that I did like at the beginning became one that I despised later on, even though I can understand why certain actions took place. Now, once again, everything is a limited resource, so needs and wants can affect mindsets and behaviors. So even though I can be sympathetic with a certain character's plight, I still don't have to like them. As far as tone goes, this is dark. There's some humor inserted every now and then, some of which is just funny, and then other portions have a bite to them, or sting, even though they also create chuckles. Overwhelmingly, though, driving the tone, it is the human drama. It becomes very uncomfortable in a lot of spots, and that certainly drives up the engagement with the series. And that then made this very bingeable. The content is heavy, but it's also exciting. I mean, it's like the car crash on the side of the road. You just can't tear your eyes away from the carnage. I mean, this is the same way. I found myself sucked in completely, fully invested in the outcomes of every player. And it didn't matter if I loved or hated the contestant. I needed to know how this is going to resolve. Now, for me, the one big drawback to the series is the lack of rationale or explanation as to the point of it all. And I had mentioned that we don't know who or what is putting this game on, nor do we know where the resources come from. And after all that we witness and watch the contestants endure, I kind of wanted a different payoff. I mean, the mysteriousness of the unknown does make it a bit spookier and unsettling, and I'm just looking to make somebody the villain. Now, I can certainly put that on the role of the characters I don't like, but there's also someone else responsible. Now, in Squid Game, we're given people to whom we can transfer the ire and outrage of the injustices of the games. And that, in a way, it absolves the other players from their scheming and their treachery. But without those masked-rich a-holes in Squid Game, we can only blame the contestants for their choice of behaviors. Sure, I mean, that game is life or death, while the 8 Show doesn't want to bring about death. I mean, the idea, though, it's still similar. And if I have an external entity to transfer culpability towards, then the player's actions can be absolved, removing their responsibility. Well, so as I kind of went through all that, I guess I am kind of okay with the lack of explanation. Maybe the entire point is that regardless of external forces, we all still own the responsibility for our actions. And in this game, are there any that can walk away blameless? The series is intense, and it's going to get your heart rate pumping, thanks to the wonderfully executed emotional exchanges and setups that are engineered to create anxiety. This is a very bingeable show, thanks to the dynamic and demonstrative characters, capturing personas that elicit strong emotions. The pacing, it's deliberate and urgent, without creating rushed storytelling. And when this is combined with the suspenseful and dreadful actions, the storytelling will grab you and then compel you to watch. There's a tiny bit of sex, at least, some self-love there, some brief nudity, a lot of profanity, and then a ton of brutal violence. I give the 8 Show 4.5 out of 5 couches. So what are some exciting human dramas that you've seen recently? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.